and get your statement to show how much Social Security you'll receive at 62, 65, 67, 70, so on. We can get that number. We enter the information, a projected retirement date. A lot of times I'll just start at a baseline of 65 because that's when you're going to start Medicare and you can start Social Security by then. So I'll just start at a base, very high level view. This is the income that you're going to receive between now and that date. So how much money will you still have contributed to your 401k? How much money will you be able to save? And so on. We'll calculate that as well. How much money you're going to get in Social Security. Are you going to receive any pensions in retirement? We'll enter that information. For you alone, for you and your spouse, whatever your household looks like. We will look at healthcare costs in retirement. How much are you going to pay in Medicare? How much is going to be deducted from your Social Security? How much are you going to pay in prescription plans? Are you going to receive any benefits from your work that's going to cover these costs? And if not, how can we project what you're going to be spending? And if you retire, say, before you get on Medicare, what are those costs going to be? And how much money are we going to need to attribute to that gap? So we take that into account. We also look at what assets you have. How much do you have in checking? How much do you have in savings? How much do you have in 401ks? How much do you have in 457s, 403bs, any type of employee accounts? And what do you already have in maybe a Roth IRA, any type of traditional IRAs, simple SEP, whatever IRAs that you already have? Is there any out there from previous jobs that we need to rake in as well? And then we look at your overall savings, and we do that for both people. We plug all of that information in. We even include any properties or rental income, any business income that you might have. We really just dig. But for you, it might seem overwhelming. For us, it's so easy. It's the same every single time. I have a very fixed structure of gathering information. And you can even click the link, complete the questionnaire on my website. You'll see it's not that complicated, and you can just plug in the information. The other thing is we consider inflation. Inflation is so big. Inflation is a really big deal, and you would be surprised how much it can impact you. And as a matter of fact, I can show you once we get all the information in. I could say, well, if inflation is only at 2%, here's how much money you'll have at 85. If inflation goes to 7 or 8%, here's the trouble you're going to run into. So it's good to be mindful. And again, that's why I love math. It just lays it out for you. So inflation is really huge, and we try to micro manage inflation because it's going to be different for maybe fuel, how much you're going to spend in gas or eating out versus how much your house is going to appreciate versus how much homeowners insurance is going to appreciate or property taxes. So we really try to micromanage it for you. But we get a very detailed budget that's already mapped out for you. All you have to do is fill in the blanks. Pretty simple. It goes, like what is the household expenses, real estate, homeowners insurance, home HOA dues, and any maintenance, lawn maintenance, any of the things that you spend on your house that are ongoing. And keep in mind too, this is that cycle of expenses that we can anticipate now and in retirement as well. So if we can even say, all right, the mortgage is going to be paid off in 5 years. We put that date in. That way in our retirement projections, it doesn't show up. So we really put in all the detailed information that we can. If you have a car loan or a lease, any of that, we're going to list. If you're contributing to 529s for grandkids or something like that, we take all that into consideration. Do you have long-term care? After we get the budget built, and it's I like for you to sit down and go through your bank statement and really really fill in the blanks as accurate as possible. Because the more accurate it is, the better I am going to be at providing you recommendations. So the better the information for me, then there's just no loose ends. We know for sure this is what we're dealing with. And I like that. The other thing is long-term care. Like I said, a lot of times life insurance is easy. You say, if my spouse passes away and I lose his or her Social Security, or his or her pension, how much more income am I going to need? How is that going to affect me on my month-to-month bills? How's that going to affect my lifestyle? Am I going to be able to maintain my lifestyle for at least 2 years, which is always my recommendation? Then life insurance is easy. We do the math and say, you need this much life insurance. This is how much it costs. And if you die, the other person gets it. We know how that works. The tricky one is long-term care. It's just not that simple, unfortunately. If you don't die, but you become in a position where you need help, which honestly 1 out of 3 people do. So 1 out of 3 people are going to need some form of what they call long-term care. Long-term care is actually not covered by Medicare. Short-term rehabilitation is, skilled care is, but only for short term. So you're talking 90 to 100, or it's like the first 21 days in a nursing home. Don't quote me, I have to pull it back up, but it's short-term care. It means you're going to get better. But, you know, if unfortunately someone is diagnosed with things like Alzheimer's, dementia, or they have hip surgery that doesn't go well, they need help getting a shower, food, or maybe they're just elderly and can't drag the trash can out like they used to, and they need help. You're trying to prevent falling. So these things happen all the time, and people are spending a fortune on long-term care as we speak. You probably know someone. So how do we plan for that? Because typically what happens is you have a married couple, one of them requires care that lasts 5 years, 2.5 to maybe 10 years, costs a lot of money, they pay for it, and then that person passes away, and now the other spouse has to live another 20 years with maybe half of the nest egg that she had, or he had. So now they're down the majority of their nest egg, and then they lost another Social Security, possibly another pension, and this is why, statistically speaking, women outlive men. They're the caregiver to their husband. They spend a ton of money. They end up in a bad financial position. He passes away. They live much longer, like decades longer, and they live in poverty. That's why, statistically speaking, women die in poverty all over our country. Not because they didn't work hard, not because they didn't do the right things. It's just that they didn't have proper planning. And it's so easy for that to happen in the last legs of your life, especially women in their 80s. And it's unfair, but typically what happens is the children have to step in and help take care of mom. And that's why they call it the sandwich generation. So now you have working families. You know who you are. You're going to work every day still. You're trying to get your kids through college, and you're trying to take care of mom. That's the sandwich generation. That's the story. We know the story. I'm not making up. The question is, how can we plan so that that doesn't happen to you? That it doesn't happen to your wife? It's very easy. These calculators attest for that. We use different strategies, and that's part of everything that's built in. And the good news is that some fixed annuities will pay towards it as part of the strategy. Some life insurance policies will pay towards it as part of the strategy. So having a fixed rate can not only impact the income that you're going to get, it can also impact your ability to receive the care that you need. God forbid something happens and you do need it. So the value and the power, the reason that this particular tool hasn't been used as much lately is because the interest rates just didn't support it. So people have had to rely on the market more. But now we're moving into an environment, an opportunity. I know you might be thinking, negatively about this, but I don't think it's going to last a really long time, because I think that there is going to be a demand, supply and demand. Okay. Let me see if I can pull this up just to touch on the Fed and the 10-year Treasury. All right. So when the Fed, let me see if I can get on the right page here. All right. The Federal Reserve rate can have an impact on fixed annuity rates. This is now's the time speech because, like I said, if it goes up, we can always level up. We can buy out of it into the higher rate, but we can't go back in time and lock in a rate that's not available anymore. That's my advice. So the Fed Reserve rate can have an impact on fixed annuity rates. The Fed rate is the interest rate that the Central Bank of the United States charges banks to borrow money. And when the Fed rate goes up, it can cause fixed annuity rates to go up as well, which we've seen. This is because insurance companies invest the premiums, which is the money you give them, that they collect from annuity holders in various assets, such as bonds or mortgages, to generate returns for them. These investments are typically long-term in nature and are subject to interest rate risk, which interest rate risk is where you buy something at this interest rate, and then the interest rates go up, and you wish you would have waited and then could have got a higher rate. So there you go. When the Fed rate goes up, it can lead to an increase in the yields in the returns earned by the insurance companies, and this can lead to an increase in the fixed annuity rates. So let me get this. It's important to note that the relationship between the Fed rate and the fixed annuity rates is not always straightforward. It's not always in line. And there may be other factors that influence fixed annuity rates as well. However, in general, I'm not saying this will happen, but I am saying in general, the Fed rate, when the Fed rate changes, it can have an impact on the returns generated by the insurance companies and therefore on the fixed annuity rates that they offer. And I want to talk about how Fed rates and the 10-year treasuries are correlated. If I can find that slide. While both the Fed rate and the 10-year treasury yield can impact fixed annuity rates, the 10-year treasury yield tends to be the main driver of any changes in fixed annuities. So the 10-year treasury is crucial part of it and has a tendency to be the main driver. So the Fed rate can also impact annuity rates, fixed annuity rates, but to a lesser extent than the 10-year treasury yield. When the Fed raises interest rates, it can increase, there's an increase on yields on bonds and other fixed income investments, which can lead to higher fixed annuity rates. We get that part of it. However, the impact of the Fed rates on fixed annuity rates is typically more indirect than can be influenced by a range of other factors like the performance of the economy, market conditions, and investor sentiment. And I wanted to find this one explanation because it was good. Okay, so here's my thing, is that although the Federal Reserve has been raising interest rates, the 10-year treasury yield has recently declined. And this is my red flag. Is this might seem counterintuitive, but it can happen due to several factors. So typically they move in the same direction. But like I said before, they're not always straightforward. They're not always in sync. So what can happen that causes that? One possible explanation is that the demand for U.S. Treasuries has increased. Why? Because of economic and geopolitical concerns. So if that's a possibility, one possible explanation is that the demand for U.S. Treasuries may have increased due to various economic and geopolitical concerns. That sound familiar to what we're dealing with right now? It sounds pretty familiar. When investors are uncertain about the economy or global events, they may seek safe haven investments like your U.S. Treasury. And the increase in demand of these treasuries can actually cause their prices to rise and cause their yields to fall, even as the Fed is raising interest rates. And remember what I said about the U.S. Treasury? It is the main driver. So if the U.S. Treasury is the main driver and they're having a flood of demand and that's causing the yield to fall, so even though the Fed is raising rates, it's just like everything that made sense before is not making sense. And I'm not trying to raise alarm, but I am trying to just tell you what my thoughts are. And one thing I think one day, I think the next, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense to not take an opportunity if it fit. Like some of you, 5.5% may not be enough. You still got a long way to go. You still have a lot to save. Keep at it. But for a lot of you, retirement is on the horizon, and 5.5% would get you there no problem. Why would you ignore that? You're welcome. Okay? Don't ignore that. 5.5% is a decent return coming with zero risk, tax deferred, zero management fee, and I just think it's a really good opportunity for people who are close to retirement, who can sail through, even if you only do it for 5 years, sail through the next 3 to 5 years at 5.5%. And maybe by then we'll just be back in another bull market. But again, you can always buy your way out of it. You're not locked in forever. And the surrender charges go down year after year. You could ladder them. However, I'm not going to lie, I'd be very tempted to lock in 5.5% for 10 years. The reason is because of what I just explained, that reason, which there's another possible explanation of why the Treasury would go down even though the Feds raise rates. And that's, I don't think, as applicable here, but that explanation would be that the market may be anticipating a slowdown in the economy, which may lead to lower inflation expectations. I don't know if we're there yet. When inflation expectations are lower, investors may demand lower yields on treasuries. This can result in a decline in the 10-year treasury yield, even when the Fed is raising interest rates. But I really think it's this other one, which is there's an increase in various economic and geopolitical concerns. Investors are uncertain about the economy and global events, and they're seeking safe haven, which is what I'm encouraging you to do. And that increase for demand in treasuries is affecting the yield. So if that's the case, and the yield is, and that U.S. Treasury yield is the main driver of fixed annuity rates, are we going to see them increase? Are we going to see them decrease? Time is going to tell, and the time is going to tell very, very, very soon, by the way. This conversation could be completely different next Wednesday when I'm talking about it. And that being said, the easy thing for you to do, if any of this is, getting to you or creating some interest, all you have to do is go to my website, mindiemolina.com, click on appointment, click on call, click on fill out the questionnaire, email me, do whatever you want to do. Call the station, 772-221-1100. They will immediately put you in touch with me. The most important thing is that you have a limited window, and you also have to take action. There's nothing I can do for you other than what I've done just now and say, here's your chance. For a while, if I could have last year, if I could have said, we're just going to lock you in at 5.5% and you're going to retire at this age and that age, and look how beautiful the numbers play out, it would have been great. So don't miss an opportunity. And like I said, if I can't say if I'm wrong or if I'm right, because I don't know. I think it's a very difficult thing to project of what the fixed rate environment will be. But I do believe, all things considered, all the time you've put into hard work and making the best out of your savings, why not lock in a baseline? You can always buy out of it. You can always level up. But we can't go back in time and get 9% at 10 years. I can't do that. I could have only done it in the moment when it was offered back in 2008, 2009. It's not offered right now. But there is an opportunity. So I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you listening. And if you have any questions or anything about what we talked about today, please get in touch with me. Happy to talk to you. But most importantly, take care, have faith, and know that God's got it. Everything is good. Don't let the news and the turmoil of things really set you back. Participate in WCNO and support their cause. What a great station. If you can afford to contribute to them, please do so. And just Take care of each other and know that God loves you and there's absolutely nothing anyone can do about it. And we appreciate all of you. Be safe.